Es un placer acoger una edición más de este ciclo, avanzando hacia la exponencialidad, que estamos realizando en colaboración con el capítulo de Singularity University en Sevilla, un capítulo que de la mano de su embajador, Luis Rey, fue, junto con Tel Aviv, el primero que se creó fuera del ámbito geográfico de California, donde se fundó la Singularity. En la Fundación Cajasol, como ustedes saben, tenemos un fuerte compromiso, no solamente con la acción social y la cultura, sino también con la educación y con la innovación. Estamos convencidos de que nuestra apuesta por proyectos que apoyan estos ámbitos mejoran el mundo en que vivimos y mejoran la calidad de vida de las personas. De ahí nuestra colaboración con Singularity, una comunidad global de innovadores que comparte la misión de resolver los mayores desafíos del mundo a través de programas educativos, en tecnologías exponenciales y a través de programas de innovación. Entendemos que es nuestra responsabilidad impulsar estas iniciativas que promueven el desarrollo de las sociedades a las que servimos. Hoy cerramos una etapa de este ciclo que retomaremos tras el periodo estival, y qué mejor forma de hacerlo que hablando de gobernanza, de la mano de don David Orban, a quien agradecemos mucho. Thank you very much for being here today. A quien agradecemos mucho su presencia con nosotros, y que será presentado ahora por Manuel Bellido. Él es inversor, empresario, emprendedor, escritor y además es el embajador del capítulo de Singularity en Milán. Agradecemos mucho, como digo, su presencia, agradecemos a la Fundación Goñi Rey y a su presidenta, que siempre nos acompaña escondida entre el público, por su participación en este proyecto, a Luis Rey por traernos la vanguardia a Sevilla, a Manuel Bellido, que es el que nos aterriza a todos y permite que al final estos encuentros puedan tener lugar, y como siempre, por supuesto, a todos ustedes por su presencia. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a doña Rosa Santos, muchas gracias como siempre a la Fundación Cajasol y a su presidente Antonio Pulido. Vamos a dar la entrada también, como siempre, en primer lugar, al vídeo de Peter Diamandis, que introduce los actos de los capítulos de Singularity U.
We at Singularity University understand that we cannot do this alone. And we understand that real impact is going to happen with you and your communities at a local level. While the ideas here today represent those of Singularity University, our faculty, our founders, this entire event is the work of your Singularity University local chapter. So thank you to all of them for making today happen. We hope that you'll be inspired by today's program. Now sit back and enjoy the show.
Y ahora pasa al inglés en atención a nuestro conferenciante. So, thank you very much, David, for being here. And I am assuming that the news that you were coming have spread around Spain because, probably not so much coincidentally, today we have in the media the news we are going to see in a minute. It's in El Confidencial, which is probably the most widespread newspaper, electronic newspaper in Spain. And it speaks about everything that Google is doing to create a brain artificially. And one of the things in the article is particularly related to what you are going to speak about today. It's the importance, the power of all the data through Gmail, through Google search and everything that Google is leveraging to create this artificial intelligence. So as I said, I'm sure they've published it today because you were here. And also today, but the news have not stayed in Spain. This morning, we've received an email that I will share in a minute with you all, and that concerns especially Fundación Cajasol and the City Council and other people. It's a mail from the ambassador of the city of Laredo in Texas, a city that concentrates 50% of the trade between the US and Mexico, and they have just created a Singularity EU chapter. And he makes a couple of references to the chapter in Sevilla. But in order for us to be able to understand that mail and what this person says, we need to have a look at the beta website of the chapter that's been prepared by Singularity. And in that beta website, we can see all the members of the chapter, 23 of us already. There are some of them sitting around. Julio, good afternoon. And Evaristo's not here because he's had to go to Madrid, and I cannot see any other, but possibly there's someone else. But also because on that website we can see all the entities, all the organizations that are collaborating with Singularity EU Sevilla. And what the ambassador of Laredo says, I would like to very much thank everyone on that page. And what the ambassador from Laredo says, and he says it in Spanish, is congratulations for the community and the synergies that are being created in Sevilla. Thank you, Sevilla Capital Inteligente. Thank you, Iniciativa Sevilla Abierta, Sevilla World, AONIA, and everyone, and of course, Fundación Cajasol. So that is another proof of the power of collaboration, of the power of the networks that are being created. And that is the topic that David Orban is going to elaborate today for us. So without any further ado, I will pass on to Manuel Bellido, who will introduce our speaker. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you. Íbamos hacia un día tormentoso. De repente llegó un invitado que esperábamos de Milán. Nos presentaron, hablamos, nos saludamos y después de 2 o 3 minutos ya le estaba preparando algunas cuestiones sobre el futuro que quería que me respondiese. Me dio una respuesta, se abrió el cielo. Tendremos que cohabitar con robots y con androides, que tendrán una inteligencia superior a la de los seres humanos. Y mientras ellos trabajan, nosotros, la humanidad, se dedicará a explorar las capacidades desconocidas de la mente. Esto será el futuro en los próximos 50 años. Esa era la respuesta, por eso decía que se abrió el cielo. Y él, el autor de la respuesta, era David Orban, que está hoy aquí con nosotros. David es un empresario fundador de muchas empresas tecnológicas. Es una gran persona, me honra con su amistad desde hace algunos años, desde que nos conocemos. Es profesor de Singularity University. Es un visionario. No es David un escritor de ciencia ficción, no lo es. Es un empresario concreto. En Milán trabaja también. Los empresarios milaneses se entienden que son gente muy concretas, que trabajan mucho, buenos trabajadores, aunque él pasa 1/3 de su vida viajando en avión de una parte a otra del mundo, dando conferencias en los foros internacionales tecnológicos más importantes que hay en el planeta. ¿Y cómo se define David a él mismo? Él se define un embajador del futuro que vive el presente. Esa fue la primera conversación que tuvimos, la primera vez que nos conocimos, pero después hemos tenido ocasión de hablar alguna que otra vez. Y la última vez yo tenía también otras cuestiones. Dije, David, hay mucha gente que hoy quiere hacer una revolución. Sobre todo hay muchos jóvenes que quieren hacer una revolución. Y él me dijo, ¿una revolución? Aquí está la revolución. La humanidad va a vivir en los próximos años una transformación increíble. Va a haber una transición de una sociedad organizada jerárquicamente a una sociedad organizada en redes descentralizadas. Otra vez se abrió el cielo con la respuesta. Va a ser un cambio tremendo. Va a afectar a muchos sectores, a muchísimos sectores. Le llaman, si no recuerdo mal, la octava columna de cambio. Afectará a muchísimos sectores, afectará poderosamente y perturbadoramente, usa él esta palabra, va a perturbar mucho. Y estos sectores serán los de la medicina, los de la energía, los del mundo de las finanzas, los del mundo de la empresa y también el mundo de la política, que va a tener otra formulación a través de estas redes descentralizadas. Como no terminé la conversación, se me quedaron algunas preguntas en el tintero. Y hoy no quiero que te vayas sin que me respondas estas preguntas que me he anotado. ¿Por qué es tan poderosa, David, la descentralización? ¿Cuáles son algunos de estos ejemplos perturbadores? ¿Cómo será la transición hacia una sociedad descentralizada? ¿Y cómo podemos prepararnos? Porque tendremos que hacer algo probablemente. ¿Y cómo va a afectar esta descentralización a las empresas transnacionales y a los estados-nación? Una verdadera revolución, como me dijiste. David, tuya es la palabra.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Yo hablo español un poquito, pero no suficientemente para una exposición completa. And so I will be speaking in English. Sorry. I do like to continue these conversations. So feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter, Facebook as well, but I reached my limit. So you can follow, but I will not be able to reciprocate. The themes that we are going to touch today, and I have about 200 slides, so we have to be really quick, have really unexpected consequences. Self-driving cars, for example, are going to eliminate car accidents, which are the first cause of death for the ages between 25 and 35. What is an unexpected consequence of this change? Young people will stop dying, and the organs of young people are transplanted into old people. So there will be an insufficient availability of organs for transplants. And an entire industry is already being born for synthetic 3D printed human organs, starting from the stem cells of the same people who need them. And this kind of parallel evolution of interconnected and interacting technologies is an example of the type of future that we are going to see. Another example of how complex these changes are, DNA sequencing is going to completely change how insurance companies work. Because today we are all part of statistical buckets where the insurance companies sell us various products that come from our mutual ignorance. But tomorrow, via a better understanding of our genetic future, we will be able to make informed decisions that insurance companies are not going to be able to manage based on their current business models. Even though if it is very difficult to predict what is going to happen and it is very complex, already today we are seeing trillion-dollar companies being born. The opportunities that we have in front of us are really huge. Around a lot of themes. And if after hearing what I just am saying today, you want to go a little bit deeper, you can actually download the book that I wrote about accelerating technological change, artificial intelligence, the technological singularity on this URL in English and in Italian, and hopefully soon in Spanish as well. Behind all these changes is a very simple equation, the exponential function. That is what we study at Singularity University. The global expansion of Singularity University started very recently, and one of the first chapters the first chapter in the world was Singularity U Seville. We also have now chapters in Italy, and I'm very happy to announce an alliance between Singularity U Milan, the Milan chapter, and the Seville chapter, so that we can coordinate our activities, to join our forces, to really interpret both our history and our future as a common history and a common future. The Mediterranean for 2,000 years has been a place that unified civilizations. And I think that it is very important that we learn from this past. And the Mediterranean must be seen not as a barrier, not as something that divides people, but it's a geographical area that can join us together. And that is what I hope is going to happen through our activities together between the Seville chapter and the Milan chapter, and maybe others as well. Implants and biohacking, exponential organizations, these are some of the themes and activities that we cover. And all of them come from understanding that exponential change starts very slowly in a moment when maybe it is difficult to differentiate the signals that we need to focus on from a lot of noise that is hiding the meaning. It is only when these forces develop very clearly that our instinct, that is for a linear progression, is proven to be wrong. And we realize that it is an exponential explosion of cumulative change that is characterizing the times. That these times are already happening is represented by this quip from a famous science fiction writer, William Gibson, who says, "The future is already here. It is just not evenly distributed yet." The human species has always been characterized by technology that we co-evolved with. When we invented fire 100,000 years ago, we accelerated how we could digest food so that our brains could be fed. And we didn't need to dedicate so long a time like our cousins, the apes, are doing to collect food and to digest food. And we went ahead and created ever more sophisticated and interconnected and interdependent societies, from Egyptian civilizations through the Middle Ages, the industrial civilization, to the point where our infrastructure now is global. The planetary civilization that we built is going to map our understanding of the world at ever finer granularity. And as we explore different solutions in a fractal experimentation. We are running evolutionary experiments in order to find increasing degrees of resilience. Turbulent times require societies to be able to react and to adapt. We cannot afford a single, centralized, hierarchical organization to dictate from the top to the bottom what are the solutions globally. It is extremely important that we recognize what are our differences and that we allow different regions, different societies to really find what their own local solutions are. For hundreds of years, the hierarchical and centralized solutions, whether they were societies or enterprises, correctly provided answers, and we were able to find incredible solutions to geographical explorations, to building all kinds of products and services. But today, a new kind of organization is emerging, an alternative where, thanks to technologies, decentralization will have a competitive advantage. And this is the fundamental thesis of the network society. That on one hand, widespread social and economic change only happens once a solid technological foundation evolves to make it sustainable. If we move ahead too fast, we can aspire to make a change, but it will be a passing fashion rather than a solid achievement. On the other hand, now that globally distributed and decentralized technologies have indeed emerged, and these achieve superior results with respect to hierarchical and centralized ones, the consequence is that unavoidably these changes will be unstoppable, and they will put the nation state and its supporting pillars under competitive pressure, and they will co-evolve and transform to develop what I call a new socio-economic organization, La Sociedad en Red, the network society. That is why I founded a few years ago a think tank based in London that today is present in over 35 countries to study what this transformation really means. And very concretely, we can already see the changes happening around us. Think about solar photovoltaic power, for example. Contrary to a carbon plant or an oil petrol plant or a nuclear plant that needs millions, hundreds of millions, or billions of dollars of investment, and 10, 20, or 30 years before you can measure the return on that investment. And once you take the externalities of environmental impact in this and count their consequences, maybe the return is going to be negative. Well, solar photovoltaic power is completely pulverized. The decisions of thousands of people individually make up what today is becoming a very competitive solution that is better, not only from an environmental point of view, but even very simply from an economic point of view than any other available alternative. And if you don't have a solar panel on your house or on your office building, it's very easy. You just have to ask your neighbor, do you have it? Are you happy? And if they are happy, you can emulate them. And that is how massive change happens all over the world. Another example is in manufacturing. 3D printing is promising to change not only the way we design prototypes. Last year, over 40% of the 3D printed parts in industry were final products. They were not test items, but they went really into production. Boeing, for example, has the latest jet engines of the airplanes that contain 3D printed parts. The entire airplane contains hundreds of 3D printed parts. And what happens to this when we don't have to place orders for millions of units with the Chinese for months of delivery and then being put on the shelves, advertising starting, and a lot of useless products ending up in the landfills. But actually we can iterate very rapidly to really produce what is needed, when is needed, and where is needed. In food production, we have the possibility of LED lighting, hydroponic plants, growing the food in the buildings where we are consuming it. Imagine if New York or any other big city were able to generate with less water, less soil, no pesticides, the greatest possible variety of food that doesn't need to be transported from vast distances, that is not creating a brittle and risky supply chain. And even now, we are entering the age of cultivated meat, where we are creating meat products without the animal, without slaughtering. And even vegan and vegetarian associations are now saying that these kinds of meat products can be consumed by their members. In health, wearables, the personalized self, are promising to give us responsibility for measuring and maintaining our state of health. We are able and we are empowered to gain knowledge that is available more and more openly to everybody, both at the university level as well as whatever skill that you want to acquire. You are able to get in touch with your own peers and learn from each other, learn from what you achieve, but also learn from your mistakes. Very importantly, the scientific method itself is evolving. The European Union just a couple of weeks ago promulgated the decision that in a couple of years or 3, all scientific publications in the European Union have to be freely accessible. They cannot be put behind a paywall, so that what has been funded by the public can be freely learned and can become building blocks for new explorations of knowledge. We have learned to point our fingers to finance and to say it is the culprit for our crises, it is the culprit for economic problems, but finance also is a technology that evolves. So rather than just blaming it for problems, we have to learn how to use financial technology better and to have oversight, not to delegate and to blame, but to regulate and to use. That is why peer-to-peer financial technologies are so promising, because once again, they empower the individual and they promise to include in modern financial solutions billions of people who today are excluded from it and who cannot participate in the global commerce of products, services, and ideas. The trust networks that we are building are teaching us that other people can be relied on. Airbnb or Uber are not competing with the hospitality industry or the transportation industry. What really they are competing with is a violence-based model of human interaction, where you believe that we are bad and we need to be policed. No. When we understand the mutual benefit, we understand that it is better to be good. And the mutually reinforcing networks of the sharing economy are exceptionally fast in self-policing the violators who are expelled and who will find out very, very fast that the benefit of participating in these networks becomes unavailable to them. One of the toughest, of course, is how the rules themselves are created. Policymaking and politics, debating, approving, implementing, measuring, and updating our legislation, the rules and regulations around how democracy works, needs to become exponential too. We need to increase the speed by which we are working to bring the benefits of these technologies to a wider and wider circle of people. And unless this decision-making can take advantage of technologies like the Internet of Things in a smarter and smarter city that needs to feel itself and whether the city really satisfies the needs of its citizens, if we don't take advantage of artificial intelligence to analyze the text of our legislation so that nobody can hide behind unexpected consequences and secondary effects of laws that themselves debated and approved, in many, many more ways that we can make policymaking better, then we won't be ready for building a civilization for the 21st century. All of these 8 examples that I gave you are often depicted by mainstream media as if they were passing fashions. Especially incumbents want them not to come because their current power relies on the old structures. However, when you see them all together, you realize that they are unstoppable. And really what we need is a toolbox of new solutions to apply so that we can ride the waves of change rather than being swept aside by them. We have to learn how to live in the future because we are time travelers. We will end up there. We are all together traveling towards the future at a speed of 1 minute per minute. And the new organizations that are going to emerge are going to empower individuals, are going to emancipate billions of people who can, through experiential learning, find how they can build lives of dignity and to create communities that are solid and can look at the future with optimism, with realism, despite a spiking state of alarm that bureaucracies are now showing. They resist the change. Often they are quoting the precautionary principle, consumer protection, to hide a real state of panic. Similar to our immune system. If I am allergic to nuts and I want to eat one, my immune system will go in a total panic. It will say, hey, you want a nut? I'd rather kill you. And evidently, this is not a desirable outcome. But that is what happened in the state of Hawaii. So many solar panels were installed that the utility company couldn't absorb the excess power generated. But the laws required interconnection. So conclusion, halting the installation of solar panels. Or, just like Martin Luther 500 years ago, translating the Bible into German so that people could have access to the Word of God directly without the intermediation of the Vatican. Today, the Food and Drug Administration says that all of you are too stupid, and you must not have direct access to the sacred text of your DNA without the intermediation of the priesthood of the physicians and the doctors who have to interpret this information for you. Or New York, that enjoyed being the financial capital of the world for more than 100 years, and debating and implementing regulations for blockchain and Bitcoin startups that impose compliance costs that are superior to those of banks, saying, enough. I don't want to be the financial capital of the world anymore. I prefer protecting the existing interests of the past industries than not embracing the future. Let those startups test what they can build in London, in Singapore. They are not welcome in New York. And dozens of startups left. Even so that if you go to Kraken.com or some other blockchain startups homepages while you are in New York, you get a big banner, sorry, we cannot serve you. But if the change is unstoppable, you realize that these reactions are really useless. It is okay. Panic serves no purpose. What we have to do is to realize the cages of the old style of thinking and break out. We have zero barriers to test and to learn and to experiment. That is why I founded, at the beginning of this year, Network Society Ventures, to give the financial resources to startups in each of these areas globally to accelerate in an exponential manner, data-driven, algorithmic, agile, scalable, open and transparent investing, and also to recognize new ways of building enterprises. Benefit corporations today allow to take into account not only the profit motive, but in a for-profit framework to broaden an understanding of stakeholders and of society at large, so that externalities cannot be hidden under the carpet for society to bear their costs, but the for-profit enterprise itself has to recognize how to be sustainable not only economically, but also ecologically and in terms of providing for everybody in society. Now, of course, you could think, if what I'm saying looks reasonable, if my words are clear, if I'm speaking slowly enough so that our translators can follow, that everything is done. We just have to work hard and we are all set. It is actually not so. Just because we understand some of the dynamics around the future, that doesn't mean that we have the answers. This is from a movie that some of you might have seen. Yes, I am from the future, and maybe you should go to China, but that is certainly not a universal answer. Whether you are in New York or in Hong Kong, really the uncertainty, which is very interestingly analyzed in the book Exponential Organizations, as I understand it is also available in a Spanish edition or will be soon, by Salim Ismail and Yuri Van Guest from Singularity University. The biggest achievement for any company today is to be included in the Standard & Poor's 500 index of the largest companies. And about 100 years ago when this happened, you had more than 60 years, statistically speaking, to stay in that index. But today, the same achievement only gives you relative peace of mind for little more than 10 years. That is the acceleration of change and of uncertainty that impacts everybody, not only individuals, but even the largest companies in the world. And you could think that it is just due to an insufficient set of data, or to the fact that we have to have better models. Let me give you a simple example that tells you why this may not be so. If I progress linearly and make 30 steps, and let's assume that I measure my steps 1 meter at a time with a certain level of imprecision, after 30 steps, maybe I end up at 29.5 meters or 30.5 meters. It's fine. But let's assume that instead of a constant speed, I am under constant acceleration. And I am in an airplane that doubles its speed every second. If it starts at 1 meter per second and I am measuring the initial speed at nanometric precision, at the end of 30 seconds, that uncertainty will be amplified so much that I will not be able to predict which continent the airplane is going to end up stopping after 30 seconds. The example is imperfect because it will go so fast at the end that in the last second we'll go around the entire Earth 7 times, and it will go faster than the speed of light, but bear with me, this is just an illustration. With our more and more complex machines that are helping us to achieve more, one of our most important challenges today, also given the example that Luis gave of artificial intelligence developing faster and faster, is to build a science first and an engineering then of morality. Google's robotic cars are going to save more than 1 million lives per year. This is the war that really is happening on our streets. More than 1 million people die of car accidents every year. Even more, if an airplane receives an order of a suicidal nature, it has to be able to disobey. It has to be able to say to the pilot, sorry, I don't want to crash against that mountain and kill everybody on board and kill myself. So how we are going to face this? If 2,000 years ago we decided that the last word about morality was included in the tables of law of Moses, and we didn't need to study what it means to be moral today. Our architecture that allowed us to build this building and every other building that we are not fearing will fall down. Our agriculture that feeds 8 billion people in the world. Our science of every possible field has gotten better and better and better, but we relinquished the challenge of deeply understanding and how to turn an abstract philosophy into practical, experimental, reliable science. And that is what we cannot avoid anymore. Artificial intelligence is not our enemy. It is our ally. We will march together in order to defeat the real enemy which are not smart machines are the dumb machines. Today, we really have the power to try. And we have to decide whether we want. We will have no guarantees. Actually, we will fail. We will fail many, many, many times. As many times as we can. And we should be allowed to fail because our society learned not to punish failure. 100, 200, 300 years ago, you could go to prison or you could be killed because of failure. 10,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago, failure meant dying of hunger very, very quickly. You could afford maybe not to hunt a day or a week, but you couldn't afford not to hunt for a month. But today, we can learn from our mistakes and evolve better solutions through innovation and invention. The answers that we find are building blocks for better and better questions. That is how we are competitive, not only with each other in a globally interconnected society, but we are competitive with the forces of a blind nature that doesn't really care. We can and must be extremely empathic and compassionate with each other because the universe doesn't care. And as we can adapt by adopting new solutions, we can teach to each other what we learn in order to gain increasing degrees of freedom for learning more, in order to increase the choices that we can make, in order to go from an idea to action as fast as we can, trending to zero. We have unbounded opportunities in front of us. And really, the only question that remains is whether you want to be part of it as well. Thank you.
Creo que es una fortuna que tenemos, David, siéntate aquí, que tenemos dos embajadores de dos naciones del sur de Europa juntos, que es un privilegio tenerlo, y yo creo que tenemos que aprovechar para algunas preguntas, pues hacerlas incluso conjuntamente. Mientras os preparáis o pensáis alguna, yo quiero comenzar haciendo esta. Justamente en estos momentos, sea en Italia que en España, está habiendo una serie de elecciones, sea municipales en este caso en Italia y aquí a nivel estatal.
No, it's okay. I can understand. Thank you.
¿Qué consejo le daríais a los políticos que van a acceder ahora a gobernar de frente a esta realidad de descentralización?
Well, do we have any politicians in the room? I have been invited to speak at the Italian Parliament, and after I have been re-invited, which is hopefully a good sign, you know, because I didn't hold back. We are living in a strange time when more and more power is going to the European Union. But on the other hand, if what I'm saying is true, really more and more power, even if the politicians don't recognize it, is already going to individuals. And just as the examples that I gave regarding energy and manufacturing and others, there are examples of panicky regulatory reactions. And you can recognize them because they are practically, without giving it the label, but they are trying to re-establish feudal vassalage. They are trying to imprison the individuals, reducing radically their choices. This is what is happening in Greece, where even if the World Bank and the IMF themselves recognize that what they are doing is wrong, because there are public reports where they say, oh, what we recommended and what we implemented was not only unneeded, but was counterproductive, they are still going ahead. And it is because of a lack of creativity, a lack of
boldness,
of compassion. And what we can and should answer is, one, don't panic, it's going to be okay. And we have to say that to those who are, quotation marks, in power. Because it's fine, it's okay. We understand that you don't have the answers. You cannot have the answers. Two, Marie Antoinette answered, let them eat croissant, right? Or whatever her words. And that wasn't a good answer. We have to learn from that too. Because people are still working under a social contract, but the social contract is not a natural law. Gravity is a natural law, it will never be violated. But when people feel imprisoned, the social contract will be broken. So one solution is to start rediscussing the social contract itself before it is too late.
Bien. Luis, ¿quieres añadir algo?
Yes, I think we have in Spain a very good example of how a complex problem can be tackled. If we go back to the late 70s, we had the problem of mining in northern Spain that was completely broke in financial terms. So the state decided to establish the funds needed to reorientate people towards other activities, and some or some retired, others recycled their experience and their capabilities, but they changed and they fixed something that was not working properly. I think that was a bold move with a vision and the guts to do what had to be done, with that compassion that David was mentioning a while ago. In the lecture, David was saying, we need to empower people. We need to make each individual aware that they hold the reins of their destiny, and it is their personal responsibility to make the best possible use of it, and then open the field to innovation, because innovation will happen. And it is, as you were saying, you can or you will, as one of your last slides was saying. And I think we have a very good example here in Sevilla with the City Council doing their best to foster innovation, and a number of other entities that are collaborating and fostering all that.
Okay. Os invito a hacer alguna pregunta. Si no, amenazo de seguir haciendo yo. Ok, allá al fondo.
There's a microphone.
First of all, thank you for your talk. And I heard you talking about solar energy, and here in Spain is a really good market for that. But what we've seen with the government is that they're restricting the development of solar energy, and they're trying to keep the old systems. And how do you think we, the people, can try to empower those? Can try to empower the solar energy development here in Spain?
Yes. So I don't know the details of the local legislation, right? I heard that it is counterintuitive. Rather than incentivizing solar energy, it is punishing almost solar energy. So it is a perfect reason to ask why. And obviously, it is up to the politicians to explain what is apparently anti-historic, because it can hold the country back in a time when, for example, the National Bank of Abu Dhabi declares that they will only finance solar installations in the Middle East, which thrived on oil, or a moment when very large installations of utility scale solar energy are being developed by Enel in Mexico, and Enel is the owner of Endesa. So it is interesting to ask not only politicians but also maybe the leaders of those companies what they think and the consequences of these kinds of legislation. And if they are not able to give good explanations, if the explanations are murky or they are hedging, then you have to be very, very loud in how scandalous that is, because it can really damage a country. That is the beauty of freedom. You can make bad choices. You can make good choices, but the choices can also be bad, and bad choices have consequences.
Thank you.
¿Alguna más?
Sí, y el fondo.
Hola. Bueno, antes de nada, muchas gracias por la charla, muy interesante. Veo que hay mucha gente joven por aquí. Yo vengo de la Universidad de Huelva. Soy profesor en el área de la inteligencia artificial y trabajamos intentando apoyar a chavales universitarios para que creen empresas.
No se oye, perdón.
Sí, ¿ahora? Ahora, perdona. Bueno, mi pregunta es, ¿de qué manera podría un grupo de chavales conseguir ayuda de su empresa o fundación? ¿Cómo un grupo de chavales que con alguna idea relacionada con la ciencia o con la tecnología podría recibir apoyo de su fundación? ¿Qué tendrían que hacer?
Very easy. You send me an email with your pitch deck, and then either I say yes or I say no. So that is extremely easy. And my email is david@netsoc.vc, netsoc.vc. So I am looking forward to receiving your email. Now, apart from that, large companies used to be the place where your mothers were telling you to go to work. If you went to work in a bank, she was very happy. If you didn't, she was worried. And today, maybe not your mother, but a lot of people are telling those who are ready, you should do a startup. The answer to everything, oh, it's a startup. And just as going to work in a bank was not necessarily the recipe for a happy life, making a startup is absolutely not necessarily the recipe for a universally happy life, right? I have never worked in a bank, and maybe a lot of people here do. I know I wouldn't be happy. And similarly, working in a startup is very hard, also very risky. And, you know, maybe you will make it, but a lot of them don't. So we have to be a little bit careful, because it is actually quite easy to give 10,000 or 100,000 euro to a group of people and delay the question. Just do something for a year or two, and we can pretend you don't exist. It's your problem, right? And many of you will not make it. That's normal. And then it becomes your problem still. Oh, you are unemployed. I'm so sorry. I just invested in you and you didn't make it. Too bad. So we have to be a little bit careful, especially obsessively emulating the Silicon Valley model is dangerous, because nobody ever succeeded. London, Berlin, or other areas couldn't. So good luck with your artificial intelligence startup. I'm looking forward to learn more, but you have to be critical in designing your path and very much keeping your eyes open whether you will be able to be really happy and fulfill your opportunities.
Okay.
Micrófono.
Muchas gracias. Yo tengo una startup de Big Data. La semana pasada nos levantamos, nos despertamos o leí en el periódico que el presidente de Alibaba dijo que no quería vender más, que lo que quería eran más datos. A mí me sorprende, parcialmente, sé que ahora la economía de las TIC, de las empresas de información y comunicación, lo que más está creciendo la inversión es en Big Data. Microsoft ha comprado LinkedIn por 26.000 millones de dólares, se está invirtiendo mucho en los datos. Pero me llama la atención que el presidente de Alibaba diga que no quiere vender más, que quiere datos, cuando su negocio principal o sus ingresos, que obviamente se pueden ser con la información, las empresas viven de vender. Entonces, dentro de todo este planteamiento que nos has hecho, de que yo también estoy convencido de lo que dices, que tendemos a una sociedad en red, donde la información va a ser fundamental para generar confianza, para saber hacia dónde vamos. ¿Qué juego tienen o qué parte juegan las empresas empresas como Alibaba en la gestión de estos datos? Es decir, ¿qué beneficios pueden obtener o qué planteamiento dentro de esta red crees tú que van a tener?
From the point of view of enterprises, it is very clear that the more they know, the better they can serve their clients. Whether the way they serve their clients is through physical products or digital products is a question that each of them can answer. And Alibaba wants to start shifting towards digital products. And I think that is smart. In many societies, in a lot of the areas well, I mean, in all of the areas of the Western world, but in many areas of China as well, people have enough. We don't need more stuff. On the other hand, we can better manage an ordering of ideas and leverage better and better ideas. It's easier than not buying stuff and then understand whether it is worth it. On the other hand, today's conversations around big data must not stop at the profit motive. All of you, I hope, are familiar, and if you are not, you should, especially those who teach should have a specific class on Edward Snowden. Okay? Who knows who Edward Snowden is? Okay, good, very good. The surveillance society that we built is very, very dangerous. Privacy is an essential value not only to the individual but to society at large for a simple reason. Society must evolve. In Italy, for example, just a couple of months ago, homosexuals achieved the right of civil unions, not still full marriage, but civil rights. Before, for example, if I were gay and I was in a hospital, my partner could not visit me. It was prohibited. And this was so late that the European Union was about to fine Italy because of how backwards its legislation became. Just like societies agreed that gay rights are normal, and within a given culture like the European Union, those countries that don't recognize must be forced to bootstrap their understanding, there will be other ways that society adapts in the future. Things that today are strange in the future will be normal. But this cannot happen if a minority thinking about it is monitored, identified, and punished. Because today, whatever is going to be normal in the future is per definition illegal. And if Luis and Manuel and I are thinking about something strange that is going to be perfectly fine in the future but is illegal today, and we are identified and punished, our suffering is relative, but society as a whole is going to be stopped in its track. It is not going to be able to evolve. It is not going to adapt to the future needs. It is going to be brittle and it will break. So that is why Snowden is so important. That is why we have to fight to regain the right to privacy. And Google, Facebook, Alibaba, everybody have to be quick in changing their business models, because they will fail if their only solution is to get more and more and more data about us. Being able to throw away data is one of the big values for new startups. Snapchat, who is on Snapchat? Okay, we could do an age distribution. And you would see, I could ask who's on Facebook, blah, 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 whatever, and we could see that the youngest are on Snapchat. And those who don't know, Snapchat destroys messages. You cannot even do a screenshot. If you do a screenshot of a message on Snapchat so that you want to preserve it, the person sending the message will be alerted that you took a screenshot. Snapchat is all around evanescent data, learning how to destroy data. And think about it. Nature learned this lesson billions of years ago. If nature thought like Google or Facebook and kept every possible piece of data, we would be swimming in skin flakes. But nature knows that destroying data is the right choice, and that is why we can evolve.
Luis,
That said, evolution takes time. And nowadays, there are other companies you did not mention, and very specifically Amazon, that is using all that huge amount of data in order to gain influence and impact. Amazon is one of the biggest companies in the world and one of those who make the least profit. And investors keep accepting that because they know that it is expanding its reach and its influence. And then it will leverage on that. And that very well-known principle that if you don't pay for something, you are the product, is just the best way to put it.
Google, Amazon, Facebook are American superpowers in terms of enterprises. Alibaba, Tencent, and many, many others are Chinese superpowers. And we don't even know about them because they have such a big market that before becoming huge, they don't even need to leave China. They are just growing and growing and growing in China. And it would be a wonderful task for journalists to research impactful Chinese companies of the future that nobody talks about today because they are only in China. As an example, China implemented export controls on drones, supercomputers, and DNA sequencing machines because they don't want the West to copy them. Contrary to our prejudices where, oh, the Chinese have nothing original, they are only copying. Europe. Have you heard of Quero? Quero? According to Mitterrand, Google was too powerful and Europe needed to build a search engine that could beat Google. Quero received 400 million euro of European Commission funding, and you haven't even ever heard of it, right? Have you ever heard of Europeana? Europeana needed, for some reason, to beat Wikipedia. Because Wikipedia was too powerful, and Europe needed to beat Wikipedia. Europeana received also hundreds of millions of euro of funding. So we really have to ask ourselves how we can take advantage of a lot of money that is available, but in a manner that creates solutions that people at least hear about, that people know about, and then hopefully solutions that can compete and that can win. Because today, the formula is not working. And more money is available, you know. Next year is something like 30 billion euro. It's quite a lot of money, 30 billion euro. And it will be given, you know, 1 to 3 million euro at a time for technology startups by the European Commission. And we have to learn how to produce startups that have staying power, because it hasn't been working.
Thank you. I have a question, in fact, for both, because I am very concerned with the new professional skill needed the new society. Do you think the public university are preparing to this?
Always the guests first.
He will not even be able to add anything. I will. The answer is not only no. Today, in many countries, the vast majority of university enrollments are to keep social peace. Because you have 3 years or 5 years before you learn that you will be unemployed. It will be, you can live, you know, either with your parents or with some subsidies, but you don't have to face the economic reality of being unprepared, of not being ready. Obviously, there are very important exceptions. There are excellent universities and excellent students that find work fast, but a very large number don't. And just because they get a college degree, it makes basically no difference. So, and if this is true in Europe, it is even more true in the US, where even worse, college education is extremely expensive, so many students leave college with a very high burden of debt that they have to pay back with interest, and the increased earning power is not enough to cover that. So it is measurably a negative return on the investment. The answer is a much faster way of, on one hand, learning skills, and on the other hand, facing the job market. It could be flexible learning, where universities recognize that it is not the speed with which you gain a degree because you are also working, or the opposite, where an employer understands that it is not a piece of paper, the diploma, that guarantees anything, but the capability of learning. So per definition, if an employee is learning on the job, is a good sign, because it means that they are capable of that, rather than pretending that they know everything and don't want to learn. So flexibility, open-mindedness, both on the part of students and on the part of institutions and of employers, is necessary today.
I would also say no, for partly the same reasons, and with some perhaps features to underline. One, in Spain, and it's not me, it's people from university that have said it for a long time, we have a governance problem at the universities. We have a governance problem and we have a staff problem. The way we get university professors is just absurd. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, I think one should distinguish between that knowledge that is oriented to something one is going to work upon afterwards. For example, we chemists, what are we going to do as chemists once we leave university? Which are the challenges we will need to face? Which are the tasks we will need to operate? And it's not just about knowing how acids and bases and organic chemistry and inorganic chemistry works. It's what it works for, what are the new challenges we will have to face, and that's not the approach the university has. And then there are other kinds of knowledge. One learns for pleasure, and that is great. But we would need to distinguish that which is going to solve problems of society and that which is going to nurture individual curiosity and the thirst for personal knowledge. Sorry.
Es tan interesante la conversación de nuestros dos embajadores que seguiríamos, pero se ha hecho tarde, son las 2:30, así que yo le voy a pasar el testigo de nuevo al embajador de Singularity aquí en Sevilla para que de alguna manera concluya este acto. Y gracias, David.
Bueno,
Gracias.
yo termino como empecé, dándole las gracias, como siempre, a la Fundación Cajasol por su apoyo, por su patrocinio y por acogernos. Un agradecimiento muy especial a David Orban. Es el primer embajador de Singularity U de fuera de Sevilla que viene, y esperemos que sigan otros muchos en la serie. Además, esa colaboración que estamos estableciendo entre los capítulos va justamente en esa línea de las redes de cooperación. Y por supuesto, muchas gracias a todos ustedes por venir. Sin ustedes esto no tendría sentido. Gracias y hasta pronto.
Gracias a ti.